Are we on?
We're on.
We're on. We're talking. Listen, hey, we're actually talking about a great subject, and the subject is, luxuries in life. And I was saying to Cherie, and you're going to listen to her very soon, she is one of the greatest. In fact, Cherie also ranked number 21 nationally by the REB Top 50 Women in Real Estate. In addition to that, she was ranked number 1 in Australia for the highest average sale price and number 1 female agent in the Northern Beaches in 2019. An award winner from the great agency Clark and Humel. Mm-hmm. And of course, I've got with me the CEO of Realbase, which many people know as Realhub, Campaigntrack, has one new name. But we were just having a chat, to those of you as the audience is building up, we were having a chat about, the luxuries in life. And I said to Cherie, you know what, I don't need to eat at a $300 a head restaurant, or I don't need to be sitting in a, $3,000 a room hotel. I find that if it's good and it's clean, right, life's pretty good. But with travel, right, there's something special about being able to sort of say, I'm on this plane, I don't necessarily love flying, but I'm going to actually treat this a bit like a 2-hour retreat, a 2-hour, massage. There's something special about it.
That's it, a breakaway and a time to say, I'm going to own this time, this is my space. And hey, indulge a little bit. If somebody brings you a champers, that's a good thing.
Correct. So there's a great term, and in a moment we're going to be talking to you about real estate and specifically listing presentations in the series that we've been having with Realbase on, what is it that real estate agents are doing in this world of high tech, high touch? How do you actually combine technology and traditional influence to actually win business? And we're going to have a great practitioner here. Originally, but also, you're an architect, correct?
I am, yes.
Did you know that?
I did. I was always find that a very interesting part of the story. I'd love to hear a little bit about the background, actually.
Yeah, so in fact, let's go straight into it. As this audience is building up, we are coming to you. Yes, the live Facebook button is on. Guys and girls, just for those of you that are late coming on, that man here is Frank. This woman here is Cherie from Clark and Humel. And I just wanted to ask you, Cherie, you finished school and went into architecture?
I did, yeah. So straight from school. My father was an architect and I wanted to do anything but architecture. So I thought, I'm not going to follow in his footsteps. That would be lame, right? So I first started in a fashion course and realised that it just wasn't for me. And then stepped into the architecture world at uni, at UTS. And from the minute I stepped in, I thought, don't flow against the stream. It's meant to be.
So you liked it?
I loved it. I was good at art and science and maths. Not so good at history and English. But yeah, it was a grueling course, a 6-year course where part-time. So I would work through the day in an architectural firm in the city and study at night for 6 years. Yeah.
So can I ask you, at what point, when did you meet Michael? By the way, Michael Clark, not the cricketer, Michael Clark, the estate agent in Manly. When did you meet him?
So I was working as a project manager for Lend-Lease on multi-storey buildings. I'd finished architecture and decided that I would try and make it to the top. So work ethic wasn't something that was light on in our family. My father was, quite a strict fellow, and if you sat on the couch, he'd make a joke and say, "Lucky for some, you're on a honeymoon break. What are you doing?" So you just didn't sit around. To answer your question, though, we went out. I went out one night after work to learn how to dance salsa. And I needed just a bit of a mental break because it was work, and that was it. It was work, wake up in the morning, go straight to the office and work until late. And so I went into this salsa class and then in walked Michael, first time we'd ever met. And his story remains that he actually came to do Kung Fu, which was the class before the salsa. But once he saw all the girls, jiggling around, I think, and he certainly didn't originally have his eyes on me, I don't think. But yeah, that's the story.
So without, I mean, I know this has got nothing to do with real estate, but I'm a very curious person. Were there any signs at all that he'd actually come for kung fu? Like, was there like, you know, the white outfit, or did he look, or?
No, there were no signs. In fact, he had dancing shoes in his bag. Wink, wink, wink.
Okay, so Michael, that's the tip and advice to anyone that's single out there. I'm letting you know, you go up to kung fu classes disguised as salsa classes. So, let's talk real estate. Cherie, you've had a great run. I've been following realestate.com. You guys have had a very, very good period, you know, during COVID and post-COVID. It's been outstanding, you know. I'd love to talk to you about, you know, listing presentations and, you know, the sort of things that we break down when Frank and I have these conversations are, we love to sort of just touch on, you know, things like, is it a 2-stage visit? What sort of stuff do you leave behind? How do you talk about the price? Because I mean, everyone wants to find out what it's worth. Do you normally sign it up and then come back? And what do you do when they just haven't signed up because they're still sort of looking around? How do you sort of keep the conversation going? So to start off with, I'm curious, what do you take to a listing presentation? What do you take with you? By the way, these questions are all raw. There has been no email with a set of questions. We like it raw and real. Want to ask you, what do you take out with you?
Well, just to backtrack a little bit, you mentioned, is it a 2-stage thing? And it certainly is 2-stage. So we'll walk in and do the market appraisal, and if I'm asked to go myself, then obviously I will add a little bit of liberty. You're very familiar with the questions that you're going to ask, and there's a very much a questions-based market appraisal, then followed by a listing presentation. And the reason why I love that is because...
Explain the difference. So market appraisal versus listing presentation.
Yeah.
Explain that.
So market appraisal, and I always pre-frame with the clients, I say, look, the first time I will be coming around, it should only take a half an hour, but I'd love to get to know your desire around selling and the reasons for, and also get to understand your property. So what I'd like to do though is you and your husband or you and your partner or yourself might have been thinking about this property for many, many years, but it's the first time I'm ever going to see it. So I need to go away, have a little bit of extra thought about it, and then get back to you. Unless, of course, they're really motivated and ready to go, because, of course, you and I will probably know, given that we sell a lot, what the property is worth, but I think it's crazy to shoot from the hip.
Yeah.
Because there could be something when you walk away from the property, you know, you're feeling in the moment, you're excited about the home with them. The last thing you want to tell them is a price that they then do their budgeting on, which was just based on unsubstantiated enthusiasm at the time. So the market appraisal, questions based, getting to know you, why you're looking to sell. Often there's a lot of empathy that goes into those questions as well.
I also find from the years that I interview people, those that go in and sort of say, hey, this is what it's worth, and they don't actually sign it up, vendors find it very hard to find another reason to have another conversation with that agent, because I think they've got the information that they need.
You're 100%
right? So the purpose of actually meeting up again, they'll think, hang on, you've said it's worth 3 million, we've got that info, if we need you, we'll call you. Whereas I think what you're talking about is you're moving forward on a journey together, right? And along the way, they're getting to know you, you're getting to know them, trust is being built, and you then can deliver the business plan from a position of connection versus disconnection, you know?
100%. And look, it would probably be remiss for me not to mention the architecture, because there's not a day that goes by that I don't leverage from it, and it's not something that other people can't do either. Because if I'm invited into a property, most people will immediately jump on RP data, and the first thing that they'll look at is, what did they buy it for? Yep. And what are the attributes of the home? And most agents are clever, and their gut feeling will go, oh gee, that's a good one, that might be worth 3 or 1.5. But I'll go that step further, and I'll jump on and do some more research about what can be built on the home, what's happening on the other side of the street or the houses next door.
That's cool.
And
On that, sorry, do you mind if I ask? Yeah. Would that be in certain price brackets, or is that's the kind of same approach you take regardless?
Well, certainly I'll be more attentive if it's in a higher price bracket, but it's an amazing way of immediately building rapport when I already know what's happening, whether it be next door and there was a DA that was already lodged. So I'll be able to say, how did you go with the Tristans next door and their DA, and what was that process like?
Smart. And essentially, you're not just jumping out of the office into your car and sort of thinking, yeah, look, I know what they're worth. It's worth 3.5. Yeah, I understand it. You're sitting there because you want to make sure when you're, like the stuff that you've said there, if I was an owner, you're surprising me. And I like surprises, because if you're just telling me exactly what I know, you know, the value proposition is not as high as it can be. Like you're saying things to me, hey, I've done this research and, you know, this and that.
That really lights my fire more than anything, because the expectation from average Joe is that a real estate agent is uneducated, talks a good game, drives a flashy car, and charges a high commission. So it's pretty low. But I am there to prove that it can be done better and that we are trusted advisors. And if they're spending their time having me over, then I'm going to make that time work for me as best as I can. And that's coming with as much education and as much information offering to them. I mean, we can't give them a gold bangle and say, list with me, but we can say, I'm knowledgeable and I understand not only property prices, but I understand property.
Would you? What kind of investment in time would you put in some of these? You know, some of this education for yourself. Is there is it a couple hours, or how long do you think it takes?
Well, it gets quicker and quicker. So I have an enormous map in my office, and it will tell me that map is an LEP, so a local environmental planning map, and that might sound a little bit nerdy. But it's my Bible, because different parts of the beaches have different zonings and setbacks and heights and limitations. And so my value piece is not just to list. My value piece is to say, had you considered, after I've asked them why they're looking to sell, I might be able to unlock some potential in their existing property for them, where if I feel in my gut they shouldn't sell, I will say, had you considered? And then they'll say, well, we haven't considered, but the reality is, and then they'll give you why they're selling.
That's gold, because I think the average consumer is thinking the real estate agent is going to say to them, I don't care about your situation. It's a good time to sell because it actually suits me, right? That's more or less what the conversation is. And what you're saying is something that I totally believe, and I said it on Saturday. It was a property at Abbotsford that I was auctioning, and we're about 100 grand short of putting it on the market. And I just went in, and it's actually, I had my microphone on so people could actually hear the conversation. So I wasn't ashamed. I said, listen, guys, I want to let you know, if you're not happy with that number, maybe what you should do is actually just keep it, but be prepared to keep it for a while, because if things have sort of hit the top right now and you're still not happy, maybe you'll be happy at the next top. And that might be, you know, at some time in the near future. And the agent at the time looked at me and thought, you know, this is like not helping here. But the owner said, we appreciate that, but we're not prepared to wait for 2-3 years, right?
And that confidence to call a spade is what they respect. Because people will dig into the arrogance, but they will give in to the courtesy, and they also give in to sage advice that is objective, not interest-based, self-interest-based.
And I reckon, Cherie, what happens then, sorry to interrupt, it's just that it's spurred on a lot of thoughts. Because the reason I get excited is we spoke off camera before we walked in. There's a moment at a listing presentation, and it's always a 1 second. And it's hard to define it. You can feel it. It's like wind. You can't see it, but it's there. There's a feeling where you know the two people opposite the table have said, she's the one, right? There's this instant where it's like explosion of trust. She's the one. She's the one. And from there on, people listen to what you say, right? But up until then, it's always, oh, don't forget, this is an agent we're talking about, so we just got to bear in mind. The architecture, how does it come into the conversation? Like, it must come into the conversation. Is it in your pre-listing material? Or?
Well, it probably is. But some people value it immediately.
Well, they'll ask you, or you can feel that you should talk about it.
Well, I can read a home very well. So when I walk in, I know where the sunlight's coming from, and I know that little Johnny's room gets the afternoon sun, and that room downstairs is a little cold, or the floor to ceiling height. So when I go to the market appraisal, I will play back their house for them. And I will also engage in how do you use the space. And because, I'm lucky that I'm a lady with 3 children, I'm passionate about property, right? So I walk through and so I engage with them on a level that's different than just, oh, that's a nice cricket picture on the wall. Did you used to play cricket? Because I find that's not authentically me.
Yeah. So
I build credibility by them saying, oh, you do understand a property. Now, you don't need to be an architect to do that. Anyone can work out where the northern sun is, where the eastern sun is, and just before you walk into the home, think, okay, so the sun is coming through here in the morning and it sets there in the afternoon. And that's valuable to somebody because it's their life piece.
Yes. And the other thing that I like about what you're saying is there's too many people that have been trained in real estate just keep looking out for common denominators, right? So they're trained, oh, have a look, there's a trophy up there, or the kids' school sport. Hey, listen, they're not looking for a friend. When they call out a listing, they're not looking for someone that's looking for common denominators to bond. They're looking at someone that can help them. Realistically, they're stuck. And I mean that metaphorically, but they're in a position and they want to move from their current position, whatever it is, and for whatever reason. Yeah. They're looking at someone that can actually help from the stuck to unstuck, not someone that's using deceptive psychological techniques to say, hey, we're similar. We both go for Manly Seagulls, right? Like, I think, the average person sort of says, hey, commission breath here, get on with the job. And what you're saying is that, and you don't have to be an architect, but it certainly helps. You're talking about, hey, here are some things that I'm aware of your property. You may or may not be aware of it, but these things are very valuable. And I think that they probably come into the conversation, and I think that they're very highly valuable. And I also like the LEP thing, because I can't get over the amount of real estate agents, Cherie, that I run into, even at auctions, and I'll say to them, mate, is this a potential development site? Yeah. And they'll sort of say, oh, mate, yeah, we're not promising anything. I don't know, maybe, you can tell, it hasn't had time and energy put into it.
Yeah. I remember as an architect, Dad was in development, and I remember as a young architect meeting this real estate agent, and he was a French real estate agent. He turned up at the house and he had a slick suit, drove a beautiful car. And he just annoyed me so much because he was like a lapdog to my father. And yet there was something compelling about him. I said afterwards to Dad, oh, that guy was disgusting. He was really kind of, sucking up your butt type of thing. And Dad said, he has a value piece, Cherie, and I'm a developer, but he understands property. And he will give me information that I otherwise don't know about, and he's a professional. And I kind of sat there and was in shock because I thought, aren't we good? We're architects, we're above this real estate thing. And I had a chat with him afterwards, and he knew information about the LEP, about development, about floor space ratio, about Freddie, who was moving from here to here, and he was like the network of this region. He was like the lifeblood of the community. And I thought, I want to be him.
Yes.
And I changed my attitude because my father said, wake up, girlie. He is a complete professional.
Yeah.
Because he knew more than just a sale. He knew about all the community members, who was moving where, and I thought that was electric.
We take it for granted, Cherie. Frank, on a Saturday, I still can't get over the amount of real estate agents that get asked the question, because you're there, you're seeing people register, and you'll see someone say, "Excuse me, can you tell me a little bit about this, the sewer line and the zoning? I'm just making things up here," and then you'll get an agent who'll pick up a contract.
Yeah.
And they're flipping through, and then they'll go to their principal. They go, "Mate, can you come over here?" No, mate. That's a 149 certificate. You're looking for a sewerage diagram. All right, there's a sewerage diagram. Yeah, I don't know. Did you speak to the solicitor? Man, you've got to have. Listen, sure, a solicitor knows the legal stuff, but you can't be a real estate agent sitting there looking at a contract for the first time. And I reckon there's a lot of real estate agents that don't understand even basic contracts. I mean,
I think so too. Yeah, I do. And look, that's not to dish out on, fantastic real estate agents who sell properties for the highest prices, because negotiation is imperative. But I love to start with the base building blocks, and they have to be right. And if you're asked by a client of what they can build on this site, if it's a corner block, can it be subdivided? Is it an upper and lower duplex? And you can't answer when you're working in property. I find that I'm not fulfilling my duty, and I find that I would be letting the client down. So, if I go back to my husband, Michael Clark, who is an exceptional real estate agent.
One of the best. One of the best. And one of my longest serving real estate gym members, believe it or not. One of my longest serving. He's an amazing agent. I mean, the story, Frank, and it's worth those of you watching this video to go watch some of the previous videos I've done with Michael very early on. I mean, this is a classic case of someone that didn't have a lot of money, right? Didn't have a lot of money. And at various times in his early part of his career, things weren't looking good. But by perseverance, patience, playing the long game, training, going to salsa classes disguised as karate classes, all of that, things have worked out for him. 3 kids, boys or girls?
Both. So 2 girls and a boy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So out of curiosity, at home, you talk real estate?
Yeah, we do. It's ever evolving. We've got boundaries. We actually have a phone box that if one of us decides we don't want to talk property or staff, we do workshop a lot of our business. We love working together. But you'll call the shot and say, phone goes in the box. I'm done.
Right.
Time out.
So you get the mobile.
I think he's more frustrated that I keep talking property, to be frank. I'm done, Cherie. I'm with a glass of wine. It's off. I'm finished.
I reckon there's a lot of pluses, because I actually think that there's a lot of real estate agents that are getting calls from their partners, husband, wife, significant others, saying, "Hey, it's 6:30, where are you?" I think it actually helps having partners in the business, because they know you've got to be on when vendors are on, particularly in the early part of your career. Because in the early part of your career, you can't say to people, "No, I'm seeing you at this time," right? You want the business. I want to ask you 2 questions, then I'm going to hand over to Frank. Price is always a real $64 million question at a listing presentation, right? Because, Cherie, you've got a vendor who I think most of the times have got some preconceived idea of what they're thinking. They've done their bit of research. I don't think there's many vendors who say, "I have no idea at all." I think they may say it, but I think they may have an idea. How do you talk about price? Do you try and get them to put their cards on the table, or do you actually move into the conversation and say, "Here's what I think about price"?
So in the market appraisal, I'll say, are there any other homes that you've seen that you feel that might be similar to yours? And they might pick, I might gut feeling think their house is worth 5, and they'll pick an $8 million property, and I think, ooh, got out.
Do you do that? Do you go, okay?
No, I don't. Because it's very much about information gathering. And so I don't, for a split second, think I'm like a surgeon or a doctor. But if you use that analogy for a second, a doctor's not going to go, "Oh, that's a bad cut there." So I will use the flinch maybe at a time throughout the campaign once I've got the listing. But I will certainly ask them if they had a ballpark figure of what they were hoping for. some people don't want to disclose. They say, that's your job, Cherie, that's your job. And I go, of course. Naturally it is.
So you don't push it at that point?
I'll back off.
Yeah.
I'll back off because there's another reason why they're holding their cards close, and I don't know that reason yet. So all I'm doing if I'm pushing the point is eroding the rapport. So if they actually divulge what they think their property is worth, then I'll go away and have a look if I think that is genuine or ambitious. And I think most people are ambitious. But in a strong market, it's not unrealistic. So when we come back for the listing presentation, I'll go through comparable sales and be quite methodical with those comparable sales. And I'll also ask throughout that process if they've seen some of these properties. Do they, have they been through? Because you might have Barry down the road who's been to every open home and knows every other property, and you might have Stephen who hasn't seen anything. So it's very much their buy-in. Is this a property that you've been familiar with, and how do you think it compares to yours? And that's when they'll offer up, my terrace is much bigger, my sunset view is much more dramatic, and all of that kind of thing. And so what they're saying to you is, I think I'm worth more. And I'll read into those cues. It doesn't mean I'll buy into them, because there's no point listing a property for more than it's worth at a ridiculous figure just to win the listing. And that's what Michael and I have made an art of doing. And we'll have that tough conversation and say, well, look, the pressure's off, because at that rate, with you wanting 6 at a $4 million property, it's probably best we hold on to it and ride the next wave, don't you think?
Is there a number that you guys, is there like a number that's too high that you guys make that call, or it's just you get that sense when you feel the vendor is pretty firm on their price and it is over market?
There's not necessarily a number, but it's a combination of things. It depends on their motivation, and it also depends on the reasons why they're looking to make the move, because they might have been told that price through family members or well-intentioned friends, and they've bought into that narrative, and so they're not asking you to necessarily say that figure, but they might be asking you to give them hope.
And gang, watching down the camera here, what Cherie said there is very profound. It's not what they want, it's why they want it. Very important, because a $6 million ask on a $4 million market value, because they've decided at some point in their lives they want to go off and live in Port Macquarie, is different to a $6 million ask and a $4 million market value because they're separating, right?
Exactly.
So the reason is far more important, and there have been so many instances where someone starts off high, but they'll sell within 4 weeks because they want to sell.
That's
right?
exactly right.
And what you're sort of saying is also don't get into this argument about price at a listing presentation, right? It's there's not going to be a winner there, right? How do you bring your view across on value? What do you use? Any tools, techniques? Obviously, comparables are the main thing that agents use. What do you pull out an iPad? What do you use?
No, I'd be happy to use an iPad, but it's more the printouts from RP data.
Right.
And knowing those properties, and I think we're in a fortunate position where we have momentum, so we're quite familiar with the properties that we're bringing to the table. It would be inappropriate for us to bring properties that we have no idea about, because you could be wrong-footed, of course. What was the question?
So when you're saying, hey, I think your property's worth this.
Yeah.
How do you talk
Put it into
about that?
context?
Yeah, how do you put it into context?
Well, I guess it's put into context by way of saying that there will be your bargain hunters, and there will be your fair market value, and there will be your premium buyer. And there's going to be quite a bit of range there.
Between the
So I'd basically say to them that no agent can hand on heart look across from you, Mr. and Mrs. Vendor, and tell you exactly what your property is worth. So it would be unrealistic to do that. Don't you agree? And they say yes. And I say, so we'll put it into a ranging, like a context by way of range, bargain, fair market value, and premium. And that could be a big difference. It could be, depending on the property, it could be 50,000, it could be 100,000, it could be $500,000, it could actually be a couple of million.
I like that approach, and the reason I like it, Frank, is that I always assume there's going to be a Larry the Liar in the marketplace. I always assume there's going to be one that's going to go in there and they're going to say, hey, your property's worth $5 million. And that person is going to then latch onto that. And it's very seducing. Like, it's the biggest asset that you've got. If you've got someone that's compelling there saying it's worth $5 million, right? Yeah. It's hard to beat. So when Cherie comes along and says, hey, I want to let you know, there's actually three prices. There's this premium emotional figure that you might get. And then there's this, probable figure, and there's this bargain hunt. You're still sort of neutralising what that other person's saying. You're sort of saying, we're going to aim for that number, right? It's not like this person's got exclusive rights. Like buyers don't sign exclusive agencies with real estate agents, right? It's not like they've got this buyer that no one else has. And what you're sort of saying, Cherie, is that you're giving them hope, but you're not locking yourself in, because the vendor's not going to come to you in 3 weeks' time like they will to that other agent and say, but you said that.
And often you'll get, you've got a lot of different personalities you're dealing with. You've got the egotisticals, the naysayers, the people who judge and doubt, and you've got the excited people who pluck a big figure. So you're dealing with a whole bunch of different personalities here. And I think it's very important to listen and read the situation and navigate that discussion, because someone who's in finance will keep drilling you for a figure, and you're not obliged to give a figure. It's not your job to give a figure, because it's not commercial real estate where it's about floor space and dollars and cents, cost per square metre. It is an emotional thing, and you and I don't know that new development that's happening next door, just how much of an impact it's going to have on the sale price.
Yes.
Because sometimes there's this elephant in the room that they just completely ignore, and you're thinking to yourself, I am not going to tell you 6 right now, because every buyer's going to come through and know that development is going to wipe out your view, and I'm just authentically going to be a moral person. I'm not going to buy into that silly price.
You've said something else there that I want to elaborate, because it is important, and you said you've got to suss it out or seize it or read the play. I can't remember exactly the word that you said, but you've got to look at situational, you've got to look at situations based on different characters and personality styles. Yeah. And there is a group of people that are obsessed. They're the type of people that buy something through Amazon, they open up the box and then they look at the instructions from A to Z, right? They are just detailed people, right? They're the type that walk into an elevator and they have a look and say, wow, look at there, there's 12 people in this lift, it says 1,200 kilos, right? So that they're just entrenched in the data, and I presume that they're the Bill Gates type, that believe that there's an algorithm and there's an answer. And then you've got your other types, which are more like your Donald Trump types, that don't give me that. You tell me. You tell me. You throw the number out.
Exactly.
They're pushing and pushing for it. And what you're saying is you don't sell out, but you've got to adjust and meet people where they're at.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that what you're sort of?
100%. I mean, we had an interesting circumstance where last week we were in a listing presentation, and I'd sold the chap a property in the middle of COVID, and he thought he paid overs, and effectively the price was about 3. And so it hasn't even been a year yet. And I walked back in and he said, Cherie, we're selling out of here. And I said, oh, why? And he gave me his reasons, and they seemed to be valid reasons. And then he said, but I'm not moving for anything less than 4. And he's done nothing to the property.
Good time to be alive.
So I said, how did you arrive at 4? And he gave me his reasons, which none of them were valid. It was just nothing substantiated. But he had his pride on the line, because I think he'd bought it for his wife. The situation hadn't worked. So this was not about telling him he couldn't get 4 necessarily. This was about him having permission to sell and not looking like an idiot in front of his wife. So that was never going to be the discussion about whether or not it was worth 3, 3.2, 3.5, 3.7.
Yeah.
So that discussion I decided to have afterwards.
Yes.
I said, I'm here for you. You've bought through me and all the rest, and you do your pitch. If it's out there, I'll definitely get it. But I had to park the whole discussion on pricing because it was more about the way he appeared in front of his partner. And that's okay. We're all human. He just wanted to say to her, didn't I do well, love? And yes, we can go. We can move out of here.
When I first got into real estate, many, many years ago, there was an agent and his name was Bob. And he had nickname Honest Bob. Because what Bob used to do was he'd go into a listing presentation and he'd look at the property and he'd pull out his business card, right? And on the back of his business card, he'd write the number and he'd say, that's what it's worth. Others are going to come along, they're going to tell you it's worth more, that's your number. And the irony was that he was often right with the number, but he was known as the guy that would drive around the street with a colleague and say, I told them they'd only get 150 and they went with the agent that told them 180. I told them that, but the other agent used to have the signboard because he was obsessed with trying to think the guy was a valuer. He wasn't going in to do a listing presentation. He was going in there to tell people this is what it's worth. And I think, Cherie, that people don't want a dream destroyer at a listing presentation, right?
And might I just say, we just sold it yesterday for 4.
Well, there you go. Well, there you go.
And did I believe it? Well, I was going for it through determination and, you know, like I'm competitive. But you could have knocked me over with a feather when he said that price at the listing presentation. And I thought I can't take away his hope.
Yeah, and you've got to. I think there's a learning there. You're not a valuer. That's not your job. Your job is to go in there and show people, here's my business plan, and here's why I actually think my plan is going to achieve you the best result. I don't know what that result's going to be, but I'm convinced there's no one that's going to be able to execute this plan as good as me and negotiate as good as me to get you the result. And I think that when you go in there realizing that you're a product launcher and not a product valuer, it changes the approach you go about business. Listen, this has been fantastic. One more question, Frank, then I'll get you to finish off. Cherie, you don't get the business, and that happens, right? People say, we're not ready, just, you know, we're still seeing agents or whatever it is, you know, and you're smart enough to know that if you can tell they don't want to be asked to be closed and you can feel that it's not right, you're going to back off. What do you do leaving the house if you know that this property is coming onto the market and you know that you're in with a decent chance? Is there anything that you do post the listing to sort of keep you up there on top of the ladder as the agent of choice?
Well, I always ask their permission to stay in touch. So I say, with your permission, do you mind if I give you a call in the coming days, just in case you had any other questions? And so I'm asking permission. So, you know, most of the time I get a yes. And I also say I'm not going to be one of those pressurised agents who call you every other day. So they know that I've asked for their permission, they've said yes. But then they know that I'm not going to be Miss Pushy Pants, because nobody likes Miss Pushy Pants, right?
Correct.
So then there's a follow-up phone call. You know, was there anything was I comprehensive enough, and did I give you all the information, and have you met with the other agents, and, you know, were there any other questions that you had? And then I might just give them a little something, depending on what that is. A little bit more information, a little insight into, you know, somebody else might be selling down the road, or, you know, keep an eye on this, or invite them to an auction, or that kind of thing. Right. So just give them a little bit more to say, I'm here for you, we're active, you know, come and take a look. And if I need to meet with any other family members, I'll offer that too. Yeah, so it's more, you know, you get focused and you go, okay, what if I was in their position, what would I want? What would I need? So just thinking a little bit proactively.
Goal. Over to you, Frank.
Love it. Well, we're almost out of time, Cherie. Thank you so much. But I have one question, and it's coming back to the whole piece on the architect approach. Obviously, that's unique for yourself in the business. But I know Clark and Humel business very well. You guys are very high performers and absolutely do an amazing job. And it's seen throughout a lot of agents. It's not just yourself and it's not just Michael. There's many high performing agents in the business. Yeah. My question is, are you educating your agents in the same kind of approach, or is everybody unique and so therefore they do their own thing?
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say, going back to the analogy of the cricket picture on the wall and saying, Michael is exceptionally good at building rapport because he's a really excited character and he would be interested in anything, and he'd probably be good at just about anything he ever tried, right? So he can do that and build rapport in that way. It sounds a bit cliche, but I'm not that kind of humorous type necessarily. I probably take myself a bit seriously from time to time, but that's me. Like, I'm a bit more of an analytical type. So I just be who I am. And each of the agents, we've worked with them just to be who they authentically are, because there's nothing worse than saying something about the cricketer and you know nothing about cricket and you put your foot in it and you sound like a dickhead. So they've just worked exceptionally hard on being that professional. And yes, doing whatever research beforehand. They don't operate on the fly necessarily. They don't. They will. This is their career, and all of the men and women in our office are professionals. They're clever people who have chosen real estate, and it's like that slick guy I was talking about. We're now not slick. We don't look so slick anymore, do we? But we are the people that have knowledge on property. And that knowledge on property people want to hear about. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I think you epitomise the transition, Cherie, of what used to be an industry of fast talking, slick tongue, often intimidating, pushy, into now what is considered to be more trusted advisor, compassionate, long-term players versus let's get the business. And you epitomise that. You epitomise that, and it's an absolute credit to you and to Michael. And you've built one of the greatest businesses. I mean, I still remember you guys when you weren't business owners, when Michael was working at McGrath's off the top of my head.
Yeah. And
you've gone in, and it's not easy building a business and listing and selling at the same time, right? Because on the one hand, when you're a business owner, you list people, you don't list houses. You're building a business based on people, so your listings are listing people. But on the other hand, when you've got this family-run business and a culture of, hey, we're a team, you're also got to be listing and selling yourself. So you've got this balance of list people, list property, manage the vendors, manage the people, and that's a lot of work.
It is. I mean, thank you for the compliments. They're lovely, and we're still incredibly humble, and we make mistakes, but we just keep trying our hardest because we care about it, and we get a big sense of satisfaction when we see an agent come out of a listing presentation and win after they were doubting themselves and, that kind of thing. It's a thrill to see someone's life improve through this career, which is an amazing career, and through us actually, we really believe in it. We believe in helping someone's life improve through them selling their property as well. So as long as we have that get up out of bed and feel good about it, we'll continue to do it. But we don't really stop and pat ourselves on the back, Tom. But nor are we looking to create the biggest empire in the world. It's more, whilst ever it feels organically a natural growth for us, then we're happy to share, and we're happy for people to approach us, and we're happy for them to come and work with us and be part of this dynamic, awesome gig.
Alrighty, Cherie Humel from Clark and Humel, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Frank, thank you again. Co-pilot, you're learning a lot about listing presentations.
Learning every day.
And this is presented to you, of course, by Realbase, which is the best digital listing presentations, whether it's pre, at the listing presentation. We should talk to you afterwards as well, because I'm actually convinced 100% there's something that you said about the leave behind document that I reckon suits your brand, and we should get one of the team talking to Michael and Cherie. But guys and girls, signing off. We'll be seeing you next month. Is it next month or not? Or are we having a break because of ARIC?
I think we're having a break.
We're having a break because of ARIC. Guys and girls, signing off. See you next time.